Thank you, everybody. Be seated. Good evening, everyone. I'm sorry to be dragging you here on Friday night, but also I think everybody realises it's quite important that we be here for business tonight. Apologies.
Thank you. We have apologies from councillors Blumenthal, Grandison, Mike Haynes, Haytham Taylor, Margett, Mile, Murphy, Patman, Power, Ross, Sargent, Wayne Smith, Soane, Whittaker and Eunice.
Thank you. Are there any declarations of interest? No declarations of interest. Okay, this isn't, I don't have this as an item, but I just wanted to speak to the members. I would like to remind you that this council meeting and all council meetings are videoed for inclusion on the council's website, and in some cases they're live streamed. The reason I mention this is at our last meeting there was a lot of coming and goings of members in the chambers, getting drinks and no doubt comfort breaks. I know it was an exceptionally long meeting, but that said, it's very noticeable. And when you look at the video, in addition, it is very obvious when members are looking at their phones and other devices and sending messages. In truth, gentlemen and ladies, it does not look good. One last point. Could we just have a bit more decorum when making sure, and make sure when dealing with sensitive items, the correct language is used? As anything you say is recorded for posterity and may come back to haunt you. I'm sure no member wishes to offend. In the heat of debate is a time when these things could and do happen. So please choose your words carefully as you conduct the important business of the council on behalf of your residents. Thank you. Okay. Item 72, public question time. Supplementaries will be allowed, but the supplementaries must relate to the original question. Okay. Richard, Bishop first to ask. Sorry, Rachel.
No, that's not correct. They must relate to the question or the answer that you've received.
That's fair enough.
Yes, that's fair enough. Okay, Rachel Bishop first. Would you like to ask your question?
Where can I find a decision which gives the total overall scope and budget for the Woking regeneration?
Rachel, thank you very much for your question. Rather than one decision, regeneration has been subject to multiple decisions to ensure that the process has been followed correctly and that all deliverables, costs and risks have been fully understood before proceeding. On completion of the competitive dialogue procurement process in October 2010, the Council's cross-party special council executive committee unanimously approved the selection of Wilson Bowen as the Council's preferred regeneration partner. This was then followed by further reviews of the decision by the Executive in March 2011. The Cross-Special Council Executive Committee in October 2011 and the Executive in June 2012 when the Council granted approval to enter into a development agreement with Wilson Bowen. This was then followed by a process of securing planning consent for the detailed scheme. As we expect, each of these reports have included details and up-to-date information relating to the scope of the works, deliverables, risks, costs and benefits, such as projected income or community elements of the scheme. Information on project scope is easily available and can be found on the Council and Regeneration websites and in the detailed planning consents for different sites. However, due to the nature of the detailed financial information, this is generally within the confidential part 2 section of the report and is not public. Whilst we recognise this can be frustrating for some, the requirement for confidentiality is important, as the appraisals include a range of highly sensitive information, such as maximum purchase prices for named properties, detailed cost breakdowns for evaluation of build tenders, and minimal acceptable rental levels, to name a few critical ones. All of which, if made public, would prevent us being able to achieve the best value for the borough and its residents. However, we do try to share as much cost information as possible as we can within the budgets clearly set out and approved by the full council each February within the annual and medium-term financial plan. We also published summarised figures on the regeneration website showing the total cost for each element and the value of the completed asset. To ensure effective scrutiny, officers regularly meet with the members, both Conservative and opposition parties, to discuss this issue and look at the final detailed financial appraisal to update them on the latest information. I'm pleased to report that the regeneration remains completely within the agreed budget and continues to represent an excellent investment that we hope to be able to replicate in the
You
future.
start with the figures, Stuart.
Thank you.
Rachel, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, I do, thank you. What differences are there between the original scope and spend and now?
That's a very good question. I wasn't involved in the original scope, so I can't tell you. I haven't done an analysis, but I do know that we are within the scope that we've agreed and it was approved by this council.
Thank you, Stuart. Elizabeth Bishop, your question, please.
Part of the regeneration includes providing a new library at Carnival Pool. What is going to happen to the current library building?
Stuart.
Thank you for your question. The decision to relocate the library to the new Carnival development is based upon an improvement of the services being offered to residents. The relocation of the working library to the Carnival site will provide the library service with greater flexibility and adaptability in providing high quality service for working residents, along with more usable floor space that is more efficient to manage. Residents will be able to combine visits to the library with a range of other activities, and the site offers substantially better access and parking. The timing of the relocation is based on several factors. Substantial completion of the Elmsfield scheme so as not to overtly impact on the town's highways. Secondly, completion of the redevelopment of the Bill Nash Leisure Centre. We would not wish to have two leisure centres out of action at the same time. And thirdly, completion of the Carnival build process. All of the above leads to the commencement of the build process in mid-2020 and a completion in mid-2022. At this point, it is at this point that the library can be relocated. This is 3.5 years away, as I'm sure you can appreciate, and therefore no decision has been made in respect to the existing library site. This decision will be made near at the time of relocation.
Thank you, Stuart. Lizzie, do you have a supplementary question?
Yeah, is it usual to make multi-million-pound decisions without producing a business case or having any firm proposals?
Yes, we did both.
Okay.
Adrian Mathers, I'd like to ask you a question.
Yeah, thank you. With particular regard to the Woking Town Centre regeneration, who makes the decisions on spending with regards to these council projects?
Stuart, again.
Thank you, Maggie, for your question. Short answer to that is the executive makes the decision in public in respect of expenditure of Woking Town Centre regeneration projects. The details of such decisions is included in the response to a question that I said to Rachel Bishop's earlier.
Do you have a supplementary?
Yes, I do. How have these decisions been made available for scrutiny and transparency to councillors and other people?
Regular reviews by overview scrutiny occur on this project, and another review of those happening in the new year. It's on a regular basis.
Thank you. That's the final public question. If we can move on to item 73, the election of the councillor, a leader of the council. Do we have a nomination? Alistair Alton.
I'd like to nominate Councillor Julian Eastland, please.
Do you have a seconder for that? John Horsley. Would you like to speak, Alistair?
Yes, just briefly, Mr Mayor, if I may. I've had the pleasure of knowing Julian for 11.5 years, which dates back to the time when we were first elected to serve the residents of Woking Borough Council. And this is a key reason why I'm happy to propose Julian, as I believe at the heart of his leadership style will be ensuring residents are heard, are listened to, are communicated with, and are respected. This is where his leadership style will differ a little, and this, I believe, will be positive not just for our residents, but also for the thousands of members of staff that work at WBC. The role of leader is far from easy, yet the principles of being a councillor are quite straightforward. We are elected by our residents to listen to our residents and to do our best by them. They expect services to be well run and for us as a council to be effective, and in our communication with them. Coming from a business background, where your success tends to be limited if you are not customer focused, I have no doubt Julian will bring his passion, leadership experience and ability to get things done in his role of leader and will be a great success. Thank you.
Thank you. John Holster, would you like to make a no? Okay. Right, are there any other nominations? I see none before me, so I will take this straight to the vote. Those in favour of appointing Julian McGee-Sumner legal counsel, show. Thank you. Those against? Those abstaining? That is carried. Okay, Julian.
Good evening and thank you, Mr. Mayor. Every councillor in this chamber tonight sits here with one common objective: to represent our residents, and it is to this fundamental principle that I wish to address this evening. Over the past few weeks, I've spoken to a number of our residents from across the borough, and a common message has emerged. They like a lot of what we do: building more affordable homes, building new schools, looking after our vulnerable residents. However, they have highlighted how we communicate and manage priorities like cutting the grass, filling in potholes and collecting the rubbish is less than adequate. It is clear that mistakes have been made, for which I apologise, and I therefore wish to outline for you this evening the changes I will be making to address these issues. Shortly, each executive member will be set 5 key targets that impact our residents in order to improve upon the services we offer. Each executive member will be aligned to a director, so it will be abundantly clear to all our residents who is responsible for which area of council policy. Effective communication will be a core requirement for each executive member. With the responsibility comes accountability, and I want us to be a council who listens to our residents, who tries to find solutions to the problems, and who residents can have trust in. All too often we sometimes forget why we're here, and that must change. For some time now, residents have raised concerns about executive councillors receiving additional payments for the work they undertake in addition to their executive role. I have therefore decided to change that, and from the start of the new year, no executive member will be able to claim any allowance in excess of £10,000 set for each executive role. Some will remain on the fire authority or on the housing company, but will not claim the additional allowance regardless of the work undertaken. This is a big step change, but one readily accepted by those executive members impacted, and I'd like to thank them for their commitment to public service. Another big area of the council is judged on is housing. At the present time, we have various areas within the council that deal with housing. We have tenant services, Woking Housing Limited, the development of Gorse Ride, to name but 3. But no single director is tasked with bringing all of these together in order to deliver our ambitions. We will therefore be recruiting a new assistant director in early 2019 to fulfil this role. I sincerely hope this person can be found internally, but should that not be the case, we will look externally. Once this person is in place, I will appoint a new executive member tasked with delivering on this agenda. As we head into 2019, we still continue to face significant financial pressures, and although we have just received confirmation of our government settlement, which is looking favourable, as always the devil is in the detail. However, what I can say is that we have won the argument against negative RSG, which is encouraging, and we'll be able to report a clearer picture in the coming days. As you're all aware, we've been without an executive member responsible for finance for some time. I've asked Councillor Anthony Pollock to take on this role again. Councillor Pollock has spent many years carrying out this role under numerous leaders, and his knowledge in this area is second to none. With the financial uncertainty all councillors at the moment face, Councillor Pollock is ideally positioned to handle this. At the same time, I welcome Councillor Charles Margetts back as his deputy in his former responsibility to 21st Century Transformation Programme. You will no doubt have read the communication set out earlier this week announcing that we've appointed a new CEO, Susan Parsonage, who will be joining us in mid-March 2019 or possibly a little earlier. This recruitment has taken time, and the personnel board have been extremely demanding in their selection and interviewing of all 6 candidates. And although all of the candidates brought different strengths, I'm happy that we have selected a leader that is not only well regarded within local government, but comes with a reputation as an inspirational leader who delivers against stringent objectives, who does so in a manner that builds trust in her team and builds relationships with our partners. I look forward to welcoming her to this authority next year. With Councillor Pollock moving to finance, I'm extremely pleased to announce that Councillor Pauline Jorgensen will be moving to look after highways and transport and will continue to take on the role as deputy leader. Those who are active on social media know that Councillor Jorgensen is extremely active around the highways matters and has built up an excellent reputation for sorting things out. When residents are asked about their priorities, highways is always in the top 3, so it is this area that deserves a top-class executive member, and Councillor Jorgensen fulfills that. She will continue to continue as a role as deputy leader, and David Chopping will continue as her deputy executive member. Finally, the vacant position for health and wellbeing has been filled by Councillor Parry Balfe, backed up by his deputy councillor Ula Karin Clark. The executive member for environment will be Councillor John Housel, and his deputy councillor will be Graham Powell. John has much to say over recent years regarding the grass cutting, and has resolved to understand this and prioritise this for our residents. All the other executive roles remain unchanged. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Do you wish any of your executive to speak? No. Okay. Councillor Lindsay Ferris, you have 5 minutes to reply.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. At the last full council meeting, I thanked Charlotte for her cooperation. At this meeting, I should like to thank Richard Dolinsky for his hard work in his former role as Exec Member for Adult Social Services. David Hare from my team have been working closely with him on a number of important issues. This is an area where we have shared concerns. I do not know Julian very well, but I'm encouraged that he has said that he would like to continue with regular meetings between the two leaders. I'm also very pleased to hear no negative RSG, no theft as I call it. Good. I'm very pleased to hear that. Julian is the 4th leader of the council in a little over 4 years. This to me clearly shows that the ruling Conservative group is badly divided, have lost their way and are just floundering about hoping someone will provide a way forward. It is rather like changing the captain of the Titanic. The splits, lack of leadership and direction here simply mirrors what's going on with the Conservative at Westminster. The council has all but stalled under the leadership of the Conservative, with the local plan delayed until 2022. Borrowing is out of control and has escalated from around about 50 million only a few years ago to over 450 million now, and forecast to reach 600 million by March 2020. There are serious levels of overspends in children's services and adult social care. The number of interim or temporary staff has skyrocketed these past couple of years. This has led to a lack of leadership at the council and to poor staff morale. Many of our best officers have left due to the uncertainty caused by the 21st Century Council, a project that I feel has not been managed properly. A recent Ofsted inspection considered children's services not good enough and, what is more, deteriorating. Adult social services has a significant overspend to rectify, whilst the way the council performs consultations is an utter disgrace. The recent decision to close down the school crossing patrol service is a case in point. Over 97% of residents who responded wanted to keep this service, but the arrogant and dismissive way these responses were ignored beggared belief. This administration has treated residents across the borough in an increasingly arrogant manner. Under the Conservatives, this council has left local businesses in the centre of Wokingham to fend for themselves whilst leaving the centre of town like a bomb site for 17 months. The standard of business cases, that's when they are provided, are simply not good enough. How can we control costs if we cannot even do this properly? This is one of the many reasons I recently wrote to the Secretary of State raising our concerns about the financial viability of this council, a lack of leadership and a poor way in how it was being run. We may not be Northamptonshire yet, but we are heading in that direction. We in the opposition will be directly challenging the ruling group over the coming months. Many in the borough feel it is a time for change. It is our role to provide that change. Thank you.
Thank you, Lindsay. That concludes that item. 74, the appointment of a permanent chief executive. Have you proposed it?
I have a second.
Yes. Have you a second? Julian McGee-Sumner, would you like to speak?
Again, just briefly, if I may, Mr. Mayor. I'm delighted to propose to full council the appointment of Susan Parsonage as Working and Borough Council Chief Executive Officer. At the final stage of the process, on the 5th of December, we undertook interviews with 6 very strong candidates, all of whom could possibly have been appointed, such as the quality of the field. This was a culmination of many months' hard work, as we were determined to leave no stone unturned in our quest to appoint the best possible CEO. Susan shone out both in her interview with the Personnel Board, but also with the staff panel, the member panel, the stakeholder panel, and also with her one-on-one with the leader. Susan already has experience in leading a council and has displayed significant commercial ability in her previous roles. I believe she will bring inspirational and supportive leadership to the employees of WBC, and will meet head-on the challenges we face as a council, alongside listening and respecting our residents. I very much hope all members will be minded to agree to Susan joining as CEO, and we can look forward to her starting March. Thank you.
Thank you. Julian McGee-Sumner, you anything to say?
Nothing, Mr. Mayor, other than I endorse everything that Alistair has said.
Okay, does anybody else wish? Lindsay Ferris.
I'd wish to echo the comments just made. I thought the process that we went through to recruit was very thorough and very demanding. And I think we have come out with a very good candidate, and we look forward to her joining us, I think in March, I think is the date. And on this side, we'll happily support.
Is there anybody else wish to say anything? Okay, well if that's the case, we'll go straight to the vote. Okay then. All those in favour? All those against? All those abstaining? I must be getting near Christmas. Okay, carried, thank you. Item number 75, Council Tax Base 2019-2020. Who's proposing this? Julian McGee-Sumner. And do you have a seconder? Stuart Monroe. Would you like to speak, Julian?
Very briefly, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to propose that we accept the proposals recommended 1, 2 and 3 on item 75. Thank you.
Do you wish to say anything, Stuart? Is there anybody else who wants to?
Yes, it refers to point 3. There's an interesting proposal to increase the empty homes premium where a property has been left empty and unfurnished for 2 years or more, from 50% to 100%. We can most certainly support this. My only issue is whether there may be a loophole here. It says empty and unfurnished. What would happen if someone left some furniture in a property but otherwise unoccupied? Would that get around any payments? Also, I would be interested to know how many of the 76 empty properties referred to actually paid up. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My understanding is, and I had the same concern, that loophole won't be available to anyone trying that. And with regards to the 76 that paid, all of them we collected.
You're all 76? Yeah.
Okay, so I'd like to take that to the vote. Those in favour? Those against? Those abstained? It must be Christmas, yes? Okay, that's carried, thank you. Item number 76, the redesignation of polling places. To be proposed by David Choppin. Do you have a seconder, David? John Horsell, would you like to speak, David?
If I may, Mr. Mayor, briefly, I can speak more for the Maiden Early alterations than those in Charville, which John has any comments that he would want to add. I think that will be the ideal way of approaching it. In Maiden Early, we use 2 polling stations and have for 10 years used the school library at Maiden Early. Members will be aware that against the wishes of local residents of this council, the the school exercise the break clause in their lease and close the library. The alternative locations are the Silverdale Centre, which is run by the Hurley Town Council, but this fails to meet the requirements due to the inadequate disabled access and parking facilities. The only alternative is that of Aldrington School, which has been successfully used in the past. Thus, it's the only facility to meet the general needs of the electorate, particularly all those who like to walk to vote. So we locally commend it to the council. I don't know whether John would like to add anything on trial.
Jubilee Hall, which is the Charville polling station, which is going, is in a state of poor repair and is now no longer considered appropriate. So the polling station is being consolidated within the current village hall, and the board member has no problem with that.
Does anybody else wish to speak? Sorry, yes. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We on this side will be supporting these two changes of paper, but with a reservation. We are concerned about the continued use of schools as polling stations in some places across the borough. Residents don't particularly like it, particularly those who incur childcare costs when the school closes. However, this is for 2019, so we'll support it. But please note that the council kicked off a working group meeting yesterday. We agreed for 2020 onwards continued use of most of the polling stations across the borough, but we are looking at a number of them where we will consider the continued use of schools and whether there is the possibility of whether we can find alternative locations to use. Too early to say anything, don't know whether we'll be successful or not, we'll see. A report is expected to come back to council in March next year. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Ian. Does anybody actually speak on the matter? No? Okay. Let's go straight to the vote then. Those in favour? Those against? Those abstaining? It's carried. Unanimous. Okay, we can then move on to item number 77, which is a motion. Do we have a proposer to move the motion? And do you have a second approved? Okay, would you like to speak, please?
Thank you very much. I am grateful for the opportunity to debate this motion this evening. I tried to get it debated in both September and November, and on both occasions the meeting ran out of time. At least by doing it today, instead of squashing it in, rather than having a 5-minute argument, we are having a full half hour. And that's a Monty Python reference for those of you too young to appreciate it.
Sadly not.
Yeah. So this isn't going to be a long speech. I'm not going to read out the motion. In it I've laid out what I'm looking for, which is the publication in one single place of all the spending that's taken place so far on the regeneration of Working Town Centre. This should not be difficult to achieve. The regeneration is a huge project costing a lot of money, so one would expect its budget to be being closely monitored, so the numbers should be to hand. Plus, as the motion says, all the past figures must already have appeared in the council's accounts, and in addition have been published under the council's obligation to publish all contracts over £500. As past spend has already been itemised in both the accounts and the list of contracts, all that's missing is assembling all the different components into one unified set of figures so that people can clearly see the regeneration as a whole. Now, earlier on in the questions, we heard that the opposition meets regularly with officers, and it was implied that we regularly get financial information. We do meet with officers, but we have not had any substantial figures for about 2 years. I think it might even be longer than that. We want to know the full figures. We have a right to know the full figures, and so do the general public. It is important, given the squeeze on council finances. We shouldn't need to root around in the minutes of the council to to try to work out what's going on. That is the situation at the moment, and it isn't good enough. And my final point is about the deadline for supplying information. The deadline in the motion is the end of December. Whilst I still think that's reasonable, given that people have notice of the motion, I do recognise that we are now several weeks closer to the end of December than we were when I put the motion forward for debate at November's council meeting. So I would be prepared to look at an amendment that proposed a short extension of the time allowed, provided that it's genuinely a short extension and not an attempt to kick it into the long grass. So I now look forward to the debate.
Okay. Would you like to speak now? Sure.
Okay. May I remind members that as a local council, we have a duty to ensure this council is both transparent in its procedures and is accountable. At the start of Wokingham Town Centre Marketplace works, the project was expected to cost 3.8 million. We now know the project overran by many months. The contracts involved with this project were allowed to lapse, and somewhere along the line it was agreed that Wokingham Borough Council would dig into its contingency fund. But of course, the meetings were not recorded or minuted, so we do not have a complete record of how this was decided. In fact, I know more about this from my role as a town councillor than I've known from my role on the Wokingham Borough Council. The Marketplace project alone now stands at least 4.2 million and is still climbing. I'm afraid to the public, there seems to be a complete lack of accountability and what appears to be a frivolous regard to spending public money. I, for one, would like to know how we got here. So if you or any of the members of the public have asked for specific information on these projects, we are told that these are part of an ongoing programme of works, and each of them is subject to commercial agreements, by which their nature they are confidential. These are public works projects with public money. The contracts have been signed, the work has been started, and they can no longer be realistically considered entirely commercially sensitive. So why is everything still confidential? At the same time, we're told that Wokingham Borough Council is facing severe financial cuts and needs to save money. We are spending at least 132 million on the town centre. Some of that money is borrowed on the promise of funding from Wokingham's housing development. The question becomes, how can we be truly accountable? So let us begin. We demand that the fine details of what works have been agreed is made public. We demand that the meetings about the work are properly recorded and made available, especially when additional spending is required. And most importantly, we demand that a regular account of money has been spent to date on each project is made available to the public, where it can be properly scrutinised. I noticed with the Lexicon there was a big banner when they were building it, updating every week, telling them how much had been spent. I double dare you to be more accountable here at the Wokingham Borough.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak? Keith Baker, Andy Croy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to propose an amendment to this motion, which will be distributed to you as it comes to you. I think it's important to wait until we've actually got the amendment before I start speaking, so hopefully my time will not start. Thank you for distributing it. Can I say right up front that I am sure that all councillors believe wholeheartedly with transparency in actions. I believe everyone in this chamber would agree with the sentiments of this motion. but I believe it's badly worded and the timing is totally wrong. Let's look at the recommendations at the end of the motion. First, the timings. To publish a report by the end of December 2018. Well, that gives around 2 weeks to produce such a report, including the Christmas break. Something that Councillor Bray has actually acknowledged that is not practical. It might be possible if the number of data items required are extremely small, but this requests dozens and dozens and dozens of items, which will have to be pulled from different areas and collated. We councillors owe it to officers to ensure our requests, whatever they are reasonable and asked within an achievable time frame. This is clearly not. Now let's turn to the data items requested. As I said, there are dozens and dozens of numbers requested, and the question I ask is, what is the purpose of publishing these numbers? On their own, frankly, they're meaningless, and they do require a narrative explaining them, which in turn will also require time to create. It should be noted, and it's been said already, that the opposition already have monthly meetings with officers and the executive member, where some of these numbers are already provided. Many of them are already out there in the public domain. So why this amendment rather than voting down your motion? Well, I go back to what I said at the beginning. The sentiments are right. So this amendment aims to provide a far better implementation of what Councillor Bray has asked for. The first part resets the timeline for a report to be published to be more realistic. It then goes on to say that this report should be a full audit, which will put a different view on things rather than an officer's or a councillor's view, whether they're in opposition or in power, either of which could be considered to be biased. That audit will contain an independent narrative on the data items, which I contend is significantly better than what the motion asks for. For your information, this is already happening for the Marketplace project. Furthermore, that published audit report will automatically go to the relevant scrutiny committee for a detailed review of the findings, which is also better than the motion asked for. And yet again, this is already happening for the Marketplace project. I therefore hope that councillors will support this amendment to put in place a formal mechanism to be used both on this and future projects. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Do you have a second? Stuart, would you like to speak to the amendment?
I'd like to reserve the right to that.
Is there anybody else?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I would like to request a short adjournment to consider the amendment. Thank you.
5 minutes.
5 minutes.
5 minutes. Adequate? Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you for that ability to consider the amendment, and with reluctance, I am prepared to accept it.
I wasn't ready for that, but you caught me on the hop. Okay, now we have to carry on the debate, although that's a substantive motive. Sorry about that. Motion. So, anybody like to speak? Michelle?
So this is on the main motion, not the amendment.
This is now on the amendment.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
The motion is amended.
Andy Crowe.
Oh, thanks. Thank you very much, and good evening, everyone. My first comment is that the motion does lack ambition. It's only asking for data from the 31st of March. Now, in a multi-million-pound building project like this, you would expect management information of a type that is useful to members to be updated every month. The idea that it isn't there and it isn't available is preposterous. When we do get the information, I hope it includes the cost of finance as well. I know from the budget from a year or two ago, it was £1 million of interest. I'm not sure what the figures are most recently, but can we make sure it includes the interest figure? Again, I agree with Pree, the date is unrealistic. I'm not sure what point this is going to be amended to make sure that officers who come in on Monday are suddenly told to pull all this information together. Okay, and then finally, as this is hopefully a new era of transparency and Julian, I hope that Perhaps we can make a start by getting this done as quickly as we can, and not waiting until too long.
It seems the regeneration project is like a magic show, with projects, costs disappearing from one place and reappearing in another, but no rabbits involved. It started with the flats above Clark's, then we have had the 6.9 million for the key workers flats above Peach Place. More recently, the cost of the marketplace went stratospherically high. It reminds me a lot of all the promises of the Brexiteers, including many on their bus, that all failed to materialize in the latest final duff Brexit deal from the likely temporary resident of number 10. What oversight of regeneration have we had? It seems to be only a secret group making decisions and only justifying them to the Tories and not the whole council, with overview and scrutiny management looking at it after the fact, not before it's actually done. As for the marketplace, the town council has been more open than the borough, even though it seems no one wants to admit who actually picked the ultra-expensive stone for the works. If it's a magic show, who is the magician? Or is it like the Wizard of Oz, where you go behind the screen and find no one at all? Or possibly a little man just making all the decisions without actually telling anybody? Or is it possibly a deputy executive member? What would I think is the council? What I think is the council and the public should see exactly the cost and profit or loss of all the project so far. And they should have the reality check on the cost of the project now being built. They're the taxpayers who are actually paying for a lot of this with their rates. They should be able to know where it's being spent, how it's being spent, and how effectively it's being spent.
Thank you. Mike.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. The Town Centre Regeneration Project is the biggest ever undertaken by this council. It is therefore really disappointing that there is insufficient information about the finances of the project. We have no way of finding out the true costs of the project from its original inception, or how we are doing compared with the original budget and the original ideas, or what the final costs might be. Is this the correct way to be running an organisation? Very few people in this council chamber will think that it is, although some won't say it publicly. But I have just heard a couple of people over there saying yes, it is the correct way, and I find that really surprising. Well,
I heard it too.
As Councillor Croy says, management accounts should have been available on a monthly basis. It's time all the facts of how much this project has cost council taxpayers in Wokingham are revealed, so that the council taxpayers can decide for themselves whether all of the building works, the traffic issues, and the loss of so many mature trees has all been worthwhile.
Thank you. David Hare.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A lot of what I was going to say has been said already, but I want to reiterate the fact that I believe that this vast project should have been studied closely and the costs of it looked at, as has been said, every year. And we need to see the way in which we keep being told it's a positive project, it's a positive outcome, the Conservatives are very happy with it. We need to see how much has been spent and the return that we're going to get from that spend, so that we can say, yes, that's good, or perhaps ask some further questions.
Ian, please on.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think we should remember that coroner's scrutiny has moved from being backward-looking to forward-looking and looking at current matters. We should not expect scrutiny to sit idly by until a report is produced in a few years' time. Scrutiny needs to look at this as we go along, even if some elements have to be imparted to it. I note the scrutiny has actually asked for a report, some input on this for January 2019. Thank you very much.
Lindsay Ferris.
Thank you. I've had considerable concern about how the finance figures for the council has been displayed now for a number of years. The accounts are certainly not easy to follow. Why the figures for regeneration programme have not been included in one place astounds me. I'm sure we will hear that all the figures are in the accounts. Well, my answer is, oh yes, hidden in clear sight. It is not just the regeneration programme that we have issues with. Other projects are difficult to follow. One wonders why it has been presented.
Thank you for that ability to consider the amendment, and with reluctance I am prepared to accept it.
I wasn't ready for that, Pooh. You caught me on the hop. Okay, now we have to carry on the debate, although that's a substantive motive. Sorry about that. Motion. So, anybody like to speak? Michelle?
So this is on the main motion, not the amendment.
This is now bits on the amendment.
Yeah, exactly.
The motion is amended.
Andy Crowe.
Oh, thanks. Thank you very much, and good evening, everyone. My first comment is that the motion does lack ambition. It's only asking for data from the 31st of March. Now, in a multi-million-pound building project like this, you would expect management information of a type that is useful to members to be updated every month. The idea that it isn't there and it isn't available is preposterous. When we do get the information, I hope it includes the cost of finance as well. I know from the budget from a year or two ago, it was £1 million of interest. I'm not sure what the figures are most recently, but can we make sure it includes the interest figure? Again, I agree the date is unrealistic. I'm not sure what point this is going to be amended to make sure that officers who come in on Monday are suddenly told to pull all this information together. Okay, and then finally, as this is hopefully a new era of transparency and Julian, I hope that perhaps we can make a start by getting this done as quickly as we can, and not waiting until too long.
It seems the regeneration project is like a magic show, with projects, costs disappearing from one place and reappearing in another, but no rabbits involved. It started with the flats above Clark's, then we have had the 6.9 million for the key workers flats above Peach Place. More recently, the cost of the marketplace went stratospherically high. It reminds me a lot of all the promises of the Brexiteers, including many on their bus, that all failed to materialize in the latest final Duff Brexit deal from the likely temporary resident of number 10. What oversight of regeneration have we had? It seems to be only a secret group making decisions and only justifying them to the Tories and not the whole council, with overview and scrutiny management looking at it after the fact, not before it's actually done. As for the marketplace, the town council has been more open than the borough, even though it seems no one wants to admit who actually picked the ultra-expensive stone for the works. If it's a magic show, who is the magician? Or is it like the Wizard of Oz, where you go behind the screen and find no one at all? Or possibly a little man just making all the decisions without actually telling anybody? Or is it possibly a deputy executive member? What would I think is the council? What I think is the council and the public should see exactly the cost and profit or loss of all the project so far. And they should have the reality check on the cost of the project now being built. They're the taxpayers who are actually paying for a lot of this with their rates. They should be able to know where it's being spent, how it's being spent, and how effectively it's being spent.
Thank you. Mike Jones.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. The Town Centre Regeneration Project is the biggest ever undertaken by this council. It is therefore really disappointing that there is insufficient information about the finances of the project. We have no way of finding out the true costs of the project from its original inception, or how we are doing compared with the original budget and the original ideas, or what the final costs might be. Is this the correct way to be running an organisation? Very few people in this council chamber will think that it is, although some won't say it publicly. But I have just heard a couple of people over there saying yes, it is the correct way, and I find that really surprising. Well,
I heard it too.
as Councillor Croy says, management accounts should have been available on a monthly basis. It's time all the facts of how much this project has cost council taxpayers in Wokingham are revealed, so that the council taxpayers can decide for themselves whether all of the building works, the traffic issues, and the loss of so many mature trees has all been worthwhile.
Thank you. David Hare.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A lot of what I was going to say has been said already, but I want to reiterate the fact that I believe that this vast project should have been studied closely and the costs of it looked at, as has been said, every year. And we need to see the way in which we keep being told it's a positive project, it's a positive outcome, the Conservatives are very happy with it. We need to see how much has been spent and the return that we're going to get from that spend, so that we can say yes, that's good, or perhaps ask some further questions.
Very good. Ian Pizzo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think we should remember that coroner scrutiny has moved from being backward-looking to forward-looking and looking at current matters. We should not expect scrutiny to sit idly by until a report is produced in a few years' time. Scrutiny needs to look at this as we go along, even if some things have to be imparted to it. I note the scrutiny has actually asked for a report, some input on this for January 2019. Thank you very much.
Lindsay Ferris.